It is the element of flame and a very iconic model to those who have watched the anime or even played Medarot 2 Core. It is the Salamander type, SLD00 Flame Tisala, with a kit of Heater, Double Fire, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Generator, which grants the Heater effect to self when charging Metaforce. Now, there's a lot of iconic points to this model that make its name and its motif very, very obvious, as if its design wasn't enough, but this flame-based salamander is actually one of a set of 4 sisters, all called the Elementals, with Wind Cecil, Earth Chrono, and Aqua Crown serving as the other 3. And each serving as an elemental, Flame Tisala's, natural to its name, is of course fire. That being said, Heater is a support-based skill that, once active, will buff the heat stat of herself and all allies by about 20% or so across the board, as long as the effect remains intact. Which means, as you're running to the line to take your turn, you will be running just a little bit faster than normal, perhaps giving you just that extra edge you need to just barely outrun your opponent and sneak your turn in before they do. Right and left arm of fire are ailment-based skills that, once active, will set a damage over time effect on the target. So as long as that negative buff remains intact, it does mean that the enemy will be losing a small amount of HP over time until the part's HP falls to 1. It cannot break parts on its own, but fire honestly does make it very easy to break a lot of parts easier by whittling the HP down over time. Now, of course, because it is an ailment, it does mean that it can be negated or nullified by anyone using Stat Cleanse, so caution is best recommended to be exercised if you choose to use Flame Tisala. Float Legs means that she has very solid coverage across all terrains at A rank across the board, and of course S rank on Cyber, which everybody gets, so terrain is something that Flame Tisala really has no issue having to bother or worry about, because she's going to be fighting with equal performance on all terrains no matter where she's at or how she fights, which does kind of round out her kit just a little bit more and makes her just a little bit more versatile across the board. That being said, however, with the leg ability of Generator, it's not bad, but unfortunately I feel that the Generator ability and the Heater ability are somewhat redundant in this case, as I believe they do not stack on top of each other, which means once you use one, it effectively wastes the other one until the effect of the first one is either removed or wears off. That being said, as a pure set score, I would honestly have to rate Flame Tisala a pretty flat 5 out of 10 in this case, and a middle-of-the-road kind of fighter. Not to say that she's bad or has bad stats or is just unusable at all, but there is just a lot of precautions that you'd need to take and a lot of measures you'd have to account for if you want to make the most of her kit, especially since fire is an ailment and can also be negated or cleansed, which will kind of reduce her effect. In addition to this, she does not have any particularly dangerous nuking potential as a solid and dedicated ailment fighter, which also further hinders her overall viability across the board. As mixed parts though, I would have to rate her just a little bit higher at a 5.5 out of 10, given that even if the Generator ability might be redundant with Heater in this case, if you choose to use the legs just as is for the sake of Float Legs, or equip a firearm just for the sake of having it, you could probably find much better and more versatile use for her parts instead of as a pure set as is. Now, as a spotlight model, it is honestly no surprise that she's one that you'll probably be seeing at least a dozen or so times as you pull for standard gacha models. So at this point, if you haven't got her yet, I'd say consider yourself lucky, I suppose, depending on how badly you want her. But also, don't worry too much on actually trying to pull for her, because she will make her face known in pretty much any other banner you pull from.